Now, in a real world, we will probably not get very far by just using squared, same-sized items and putting them into containers. So let's now actually look at something more practical and how you could use flex direction in a more realistic scenario. So what we have here is just a very simple setup of something that could be a web page, or also it could be, I don't know, a sub UI in your game, something like that, where we have some kind of menu and where we have some kind of content area. So you can see in our hierarchy that is kind of our basic interpretation of this layout. We have a title bar and we have a content section. Now, let's imagine that somebody came to us and said, okay, we have this great, beautiful website, but what we now need is another website, or the same website that is supposed to work on phones or on screens that are that have a vertical orientation, that are much smaller in their width. Now, with flex direction, you basically need a couple of clicks to change that. Now, see what happens when I take my container element. And my container element now has a flex direction of column, which means that I have basically two sections, two items that are aligned on top of each other, or beneath each other, because technically our main axis is going from top to bottom. So we have one item at the top and one item below. Now, when I switch this to a row, now I have my elements aligned left to right. And when I now go to my title bar and I do the same thing, I again switch their direction. You can already see we kind of changed our title bar from being at the top to being on the side. And now let's again go back to the scenario where we have so now let's again go back to the scenario where we have a device that has a portrait orientation, a vertical orientation. Now you can see our content container gets messed up, but only until we also switch its direction. And so now you could obviously would play around a little bit, especially with your spacing of your items in your title container. But generally, we switched our layout from a kind of landscape layout to a portrait layout. And we can do this back again. When we go to our container, we change our container to a column orientation. We change our title bar to a row orientation, and we change our content container to a row orientation. We are back in this landscape layout. And you can imagine you could also do that with a lot of more elements. Obviously, if you have more elements, probably there's a little bit more work to do, but we changed this basic layout with just 3 clicks, only using the flex direction. So that's kind of powerful, and you could do that just to reuse your layout and have less work in separate UXML files. But you could also set up some kind of media queries, if you know this from the web world, which would only mean that in your C# code, in our actual code, we could have something that detects the width of our screen, and based on that width, once we pass a certain width, we would then change the flex direction of our items. No, I just messed something up. Okay, now it works. We would just change the flex direction of our items and could have something like an automatic responsive layout by just changing the flex direction. So That's one simple practical use of flex direction here. We will see one more in the next video.